All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are on our last page of notes for this unit, and they are on two-way tables again. We're going to spend our second day talking about two-way tables, and we're going to talk again about our example where we had students who chose their favorite superpower that they would want, and we also found out what their gender was. So if you take a look at this chart right here, this is what we got in question number 1 on page 4 of your notes, on the previous page of your notes. So we already gathered this information. Now here's the thing that we want to do. Remember in question number 2 on the previous page of our notes, we figured out that this right here means that about 11% of everyone that was surveyed, because this is out of 350, so about 11% of everyone were females that chose to fly. But it might be interesting to figure out, well, out of all the people that were females, out of all the girls that were surveyed, what percentage of those people chose to fly? Okay, so that's what we're going to figure out in number 1. It says use the frequency counts from the table to calculate the missing row conditional relative frequency. So what on earth does this even mean? Well, first of all, it says it's a row. So that means that I'm going to look at my rows right here. So that means that I'm going to look at my males and I'm going to look at my females. And it says it's a conditional relative frequency, which means that it's based on a condition. Before, when we did this right here, there was no condition. It was 49 out of everybody. It was 11% of everyone chose, 11% of everyone that was surveyed were females that chose to fly. But right here, our condition is based on the row. So our condition is going to be females. So I want to know, out of all the females, what percentage of females chose to fly? All right, so we'll talk about how to figure that out right now. All right, so how do I figure this out? Well, I know that 49 females chose to fly out of a total of 228. Okay, so that means it's going to be 49 out of 228, which gives me approximately, let's figure this out right here. So 49 out of 228 gives me about 0.2149, so on and so forth. However, it says to round right here to the nearest thousandth. So I'm going to look right here, and I'm going to see this is the thousandths place. I look at the number that comes after it. It's a 9. It's 5 and above, so I give this 4 a shove, so I get 0.215. So that's what I'm going to fill in right here, 0.215. What does this mean, though? This means that 21.5% of females, because it's out of 228, chose to fly. Okay, it's not out of everyone. So now I want to know what percentage of females chose freeze time. So I know that 60 out of 228 females chose freeze time. So when I divide that all out, I end up getting 60 out of 228 equals 0.263157895. Look at the thousandths place, a 1 comes after it, so I keep it the same, so it's 0.263. So I get approximately 0.263. Now when you figure this out right here, this means that about 26.3% of females this time were people who chose to freeze time, excuse me. So 26.3% of females, because it's out of the female total, chose freeze time. I want you to finish up the rest of the female row on your own by pressing pause, calculating it, and then coming back to me to see if you got the right answer, okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, so you should have gotten these answers right here, 0.211, 0.004, 0.307, and then 1.000. Now this you should have gotten one whole, which should make sense to you because 100% of the females that were surveyed were female. So it should be 100% right here. This means right here that 0.4% of females chose super strength. This means that 21.1% of females chose super strength, and this means 30.7% of females chose super strength. Now I want to confirm that I got this all correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up all of my values right here, and it should add up to 100% because this right here, all of these values are all the females, and when you add them together, you should get all the females accounted for. So let's check to make sure it's correct. To fly, we had 0.215. For freeze time, we had 0.263. For invisibility, we had 0.211. For super strength, we had 0.004, and for telepathy, we had 0.307. Add them all together, we should get 1. Press enter, fingers crossed. 1, it's 100%, it worked out for us. Excellent. All right, now remember, we're doing the row conditional relative frequencies. So these are based on our rows that we have. So our first condition was female. Our second condition are the males. So now we want to figure out what percentage of males chose each one of these answers right here. So let's go ahead and do that. We know that there are 222 males altogether, and we know that 51 of them chose to fly. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to say 51 out of 222 this time, because there were 222 males, is the answer that I get here. So let's figure out what this is going to end up being. So let's do this. 51 out of 222. Round that to the nearest thousandths. So here's the tenths, here's the hundredths, here's the thousandths. You get a 9. Look at what comes after it. It's a 7. So this 7 will bump this 9 up to a 10, but I obviously can't put a 10 here. So this will bump this 9 up to a 0, which bumps this 2 up to a 3. So what we'll say right here is the answer is 0.230. Okay, so again, it's 0.230. Now, to figure out what percentage of males chose freeze time, we know that 71 males chose freeze time out of 222 males altogether. So let's calculate what this is going to be. So 71 out of 222 altogether, you end up getting 0.319. There's an 8 that comes after the 9, so I gotta give the 9 a shove. So this 9 becomes a 0, this 1 becomes a 2. So it's 0.320. So 32.320. 32% of the males, because it's out of the total males right here, chose freeze time. 23% of the males chose to fly. Okay, I want you to complete the rest of this this row for me on your own. Again, press pause and then come back and check to see how you did. All right, so your answers you should have gotten are 0.122, 0.113, 0.216, and a whole 1.000. By the way, we have these extra zeros here because it says to round to the nearest thousandth right here. Now, it's not really as important to get the numbers. What's more important is to understand what these numbers mean. So again, this right here means that 12.2% of the males, because that's the total number of males there were, chose invisibility. This right here means that 11.3% of the males chose super strength, and this means that 21.6% of the males chose chose telepathy, excuse me. So let's add up all of these numbers together and see what we end up getting. All right, so when we add them together, all of these values that we have right here, we should end up getting 100% or one whole, because this is the breakup of all the males that there were. So let's add them together and see what we get. So I'm going to start off with 0.230, right? And then I'm going to add this 0.320, and I'm going to keep going with this, see what I end up getting. So 0.320 plus 0.122 plus 0.113 plus 0.216, add them all together. Oh no, I don't get a whole, I get 1.001. Why did that happen? It should add up to 100%. Well, it happened because we did a lot of rounding here. If we had rounded out further, not to the thousandths place, maybe to the millionths place, we would have a more accurate answer. Then we wouldn't have it add up to 1.001, it would just add up to one whole. Okay, so we just did row conditional relative frequencies. So now let's look at question number 2. It says use the frequency counts from the table to calculate the missing column conditional relative frequencies. So this time our conditions are in our columns. So our conditions are to fly, freeze time, invisibility, super strength, and telepathy. So this time it's going to be out of the total number of people that chose the different superpowers. So if you notice at the top for our summary table right here, there were 49 females that chose to fly out of 100 people altogether that chose to fly. So you should end up getting 49 out of 100 because 100 people chose to fly. Now you don't need a calculator for that. You should know that it's just 0.49, and then I'll add a 0 on because it's rounded to the nearest thousandth. And then we need to look and see, well, how many males out of all the people that chose to fly were present? So let's see how many males there were. We should see that 51 males chose to fly out of 100 people altogether that chose to fly. So we're going to say that this is 51 out of 100, which is equal to 0.510. All right, and then the total that we have right here is 100 people chose to fly out of 100 people that chose to fly. So this should equal 100, or one whole. So 100 out of 100 equals 1.000. So that's what we should end up getting there. And if you add up 0.490 with 0.510, it should add up to a whole. So let's try it. 0.49 plus 0.51. You get a whole. Now this should make sense to you because this is saying that 49% of everybody that chose to fly was female, and then 51% of everyone that chose to fly was male. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for freeze time. For freeze time, we got to figure out how many people altogether chose freeze time. Well, 131 people here chose freeze time, and 60 of them were females. So I would do 60 out of 131. So let's figure this out. 60 over 131 is approximately equal to, so let's type this in, 60 out of 131. You get approximately 0.458015267. So we look at this 8. This is the thousandths place. There's a 0 after it, so I keep the 8 the same, so I get 0.458. Okay, so again, I end up getting 0.458. So what this means is that 45.8% of everyone that chose freeze time were females. Okay, and then let's figure out this other one right here. Well, we know that 71 males out of 131 people chose freeze time. So when I divide that out, you end up getting 71 out of 131, which gives you 0.541984733. Look at the 1. There's a 9 that comes after it, so that means that it's going to give this 1 a shove up to 2. So you get 0.542. So 0.542. So what this means is that 54.2% of everyone that chose freeze time was a male. All right, so then this is 131 out of 131, so you end up getting 1.000. Add them together, you get 0.458 plus 0.542. Add them together, you end up getting a whole, and that works out for how we want it to work out. I would like you to please calculate the remaining 9 boxes in this table on your own, and then come back to me to see how you did. Make sure you give yourselves a chance to try it on your own so you really understand how to do this, all right? All right, so these are the values you should have gotten. So let's go over this, 0.640, 0.360, and 1. Here you should have gotten 0.038, 0.962, and 1. And here you should have gotten 0.593, 0.407, and 1. Now, you gotta understand what these numbers mean. It's great that you can figure them out, but you gotta understand what these numbers even mean. So this means that 64% of everyone that chose invisibility were females, and 36% of everyone that chose invisibility were males, okay? This means 3.8% of everyone that chose super strength were females, and this means 96.2% of everyone that chose super strength were males. And then lastly here, 59% of people that chose telepathy were females, and 40.7% of people who chose telepathy were males, okay? If you got any of these calculations incorrect, put stars next to them so we can figure out where your mistakes are so you totally understand how to do this. Come with any questions that you might have. I hope you have a wonderful day.